Everest or Everest? Were Norgay and Hillary really the first two to summit? Do you call it Sagarmatha, Chomolungma, or Everest? I am your host, Pauline Reynolds-Nuttall of the All About Everest podcast since 2021. Join me weekly for all things Mount Everest, including updates, features, interviews, trivia, and so much more. It doesn't matter if you are an adventurer or an armchair mountaineer. There's something here for everyone as long as you love the mountain. As an outdoorsy person, I am always looking to up my outdoor game. I have two favorite products that I've discovered in the last couple of years, and they are kind of my go-to. The first one is the Nomadic Outdoor subscription box. It starts at $29.99 and they have monthly and quarterly plans. I have discovered cool outdoor brands by getting this box and brands that I would never have purchased on my own, including introductions to gear that I didn't even know existed. It's a great way to get new affordable gear and discover new brands as well. Check out thenomadic.com. That's thenomadic with a K.com. My other favorite product is through mymedic.com. I used to have a hard time finding the perfect first aid kit for home, the great outdoors, the car, and my short-term rental. But with MyMedic, I have found the perfect first aid kit for each of my needs and endeavors. My favorite go-to is the MyMedic Hiker Medic Kit that we use for camping, backpacking, hiking, and off-roading. You can also restock the stuff that you've used through MyMedic as well. Both links are affiliate links, and I may earn a small commission from them if you click on the links that are included in the show description.
Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of the All About Everest podcast. Today's episode is part 2 of the spring 2024 Everest season. Last episode, I covered updates for books and movies coming out, who I follow during the Everest season, the number of permits, estimated summits, the number of deaths, and some other statistics. And I got as far as the ice doctors and the ice fall. Next week's episode is about David Brashears and his contribution to the mountaineering community and the Everest community as well. Before I get into the rest of the episode, a quick shout out to my mother as usual, and a reminder because this is my platform. Hold space, hold the light for the hostages in Gaza and the innocent civilians in Gaza that are being affected by the conflict. Hashtag bring them home now. Hashtag free Palestine from Hamas. Hashtag Netanyahu go home. This week's mountaineering book is the last of his kind, The Life and Adventures of Bradford Washburn, America's Boldest Mountaineer by David Roberts. Washburn was an American mountaineer, explorer, photographer, and cartographer. If you don't know what a cartographer is, it's someone who creates maps. He definitely had a contribution to the mountaineering community, especially Alaska. It's been a good read so far. I haven't finished it all the way. I'm a little behind on my reading this week, just like I was last week. But I do recommend it, and it's on my list of 52 mountaineering books in 52 weeks. All right, so to the continuation from last week, this year was very difficult in setting up the route in the icefall, and it took longer than normal. It took an additional 12 days than what it normally does, and it's likely due to the warming climates. The route through the icefall is a series of ropes and ladders, and the icefall doctors that are employed by the Sagarmatha Pollution Control Committee, say that 50 times fast or even 3 times fast. It's their job to go through the icefall and basically set up the route for all of the climbers and the high altitude porters. And it usually, it takes time because the icefall is always moving. It is a flowing river of ice. And it's affected by the weather. It's affected by how the winter was before then. And this year it was more challenging than normal. They didn't use extra ladders this year. I believe they used 4, but it was hard just to find a route that they could safely get across the icefall. There were some repairs that were made, but establishing that initial route took way longer than what it normally does. And, it's likely because of climate change. And this last winter, it was drier and warmer than normal. And also because of the weather this last winter, it makes all of the routes a bit rockier, harder to circumvent. There's not as much snow, and it creates a bigger risk of falling rock. In 2023, the ropes were fixed to the summit by May 12th on the Nepali side. This year, it was May 10th. So even with the delays in the icefall, they were pretty much on time. The ropes on the Tibetan side were finished on May 7th, and that was the entry date for the teams to go into Tibet. When you are climbing Mount Everest, the most important things are climbing with a good and qualified expedition company, having the correct gear, having the right experience and skills, and your team picking the best weather window. Having the best team and guide for you, and also the weather, those I think are the two most important things, even more important than the experience that you have and even having adequate gear. I mean, those are number two, or those are the top two things I personally believe can either make or break your summit bid. And one of the things is that the higher ticket companies, they usually have a lower death rate, and it's because they have more money. They have more money to invest in their guides, to give them better training. They can hire more Sherpa support. And I said it just a second ago, weather. They pay specialty companies out there for a better and accurate weather report. Now, a lot of companies out there just use the regular weather report and the Google weather forecast. What you get is what you pay for is what you get when it comes to the weather reports. And there's definitely a difference in the quality of weather reports if you look at Google or if you pay these specialized companies. I can't remember which episode it was, but it was, let's see. I do remember which episode it was. Beyond the Limit, or Everest Beyond the Limit with Russell Bryce. And I believe it was season 1. He really goes into detail of how important it is to know the weather and the services that he uses and how it helps him make the right decisions for his team. I want to say it was probably like episode 5 or 6 of season 1. I'm going to have to go back and look at that. He did a lot of things right, and he had an impeccable safety record. And a part of it is that he spared no expense in getting the best of the best, including predictions of the weather. We talk about money all the time. Is spending $150,000 on your expedition, is that going to guarantee your safety? Comparing it to a company that charges $60,000? Not necessarily. However, usually, again, you get what you pay for. I am not ragging on anyone in particular, but, and I've said this multiple times, that your success and your life, it really depends on the company that you choose. Not all Western companies are reputable, and not all Nepali companies are reputable either. But there are ones that have better track records than others. And one of the biggest differences between the Western companies and the Nepali companies is that the Nepali companies aren't as regulated and don't have as many requirements as the Western companies in order to run expeditions in Nepal. It's just how it is. And there has been more transparency this year than ever before regarding which companies have had deaths. It seems like in previous years that it was kind of not necessarily kept secret, but no one openly talked about it, and no one really talked about the reasons why those deaths occurred. But not last year, and definitely not this year. So this year, there were 8 deaths, and all 8 of them were Nepali-run companies. Last year, 15 of the 18 deaths were clients from Nepali-run companies. It is so important to do your research before committing to a particular guiding service. There are a lot of really great Nepali operators, but you really have to do your research. And many of them don't have access to some of the training that the Westerners have access to. And you can figure it out. It's not that hard. I've talked about a particular guide. I haven't named names because I could be wrong. But there is one particular guide, and this is to kind of give you an example. This guide offers expeditions, and besides having a lot of climbing experience and summiting K2 and Everest, I cannot find any certifications for this person. Like no climbing schools, no IFMGA certifications, or anything like that. And this person all the time says, hey, if you want to climb Everest with me and K2 with me, go ahead, sign up. You can find details on my website. And that scares me because I know I'm 98% sure that this person does not have certification. But because they are Nepali, they don't have to have all of the certifications that the many or almost all of the Western companies have to have. And it scares me. And every time I see their posts, because they are active in a lot of the Facebook groups that I'm involved in for mountaineering, I cringe. And so I cannot stress how important it is. Do your research, because there are people out there that should not be guiding. And it's not because they aren't great climbers, because this person is an excellent climber. This person just has no guiding experience and hasn't gone through the classes. All right, the weather on Mount Everest is affected by the jet stream and the weather that's going on in the Bay of Bengal and even the Indian Ocean. Last year, in 2023, it was extremely cold, which led to lots of frostbite. This year, it wasn't as cold, but it was way windier. There were gusts up to 50 miles per hour, if not more. Even though the wind was crazy this year, it didn't seem to impact the climbing too much. On May 12th, there were several companies that turned around because it just got too windy. But other than that, it didn't seem to affect the climbing this year. The climbing on the Nepali side was fairly spread out, unlike 2019 when there was such a narrow window of 2 days that it created this traffic jam. And the picture taken in 2019 of the conga line on Everest, taken by Nirmal Purja, went viral. But this year they were really spread out. The summit started on the 11th and went all the way through the 27th, with the 19th and the 21st being the days with the most summits. But it was less than 100, between 70 to 100 summits on those 2 days. And again, everything was just kind of spread out. Besides the difficulty of the icefall this year and the high winds, another big safety issue was the cornice collapse near the Hillary Step. If you don't know what a cornice is in mountaineering, the definition is an overhanging mass of hardened snow at the edge of a mountain precipice. That's what a cornice is in mountaineering. And it seems like this overhang became overcrowded because people were on it, and it just broke off to the extra weight. That's what they think happened. There could have been other issues. Could it have been prevented? Maybe. I don't know if we'll ever know, because there's just no regulation on the Nepali side. And even though it probably should be investigated for safety reasons, because that would make sense, it most likely won't. When the cornice collapsed, there were 2 climbers that were not attached to the fixed ropes. British climber Daniel Paul Patterson, 40, and Sherpa Paz Tenji Sherpa, and they just were swept away when the cornice collapsed. They're missing, presumed deceased. They were not able to really search for their bodies because it was just a straight shot down and into the Chinese side. Notable summits for 2024, including records. And I did talk about this a little bit last episode, but again, I'm going to mention it today and just talk about a lot more of them. Kami Rita Sherpa, amazing human, awesome mountaineer. I've interviewed him. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man. He completed his 29th and 30th summit this season, keeping his record for the most summits on Mount Everest. Kenton Cool, at age 50, from England, has summited 18 times, keeping his record for the most summits of a Westerner, and at 50. Slovakian Lena Polakova became the 10th woman to summit Mount Everest without O's on May 21st. And Slovakian Lucia Janakova became the first Slovakian woman to summit on May 12th. So 2 Slovakian women and 2 records, all in the span of a little over a week. 9 days, I believe. Female Funjo Lama reclaimed her record as the fastest woman to summit Mount Everest in 14 hours and 31 minutes. She does not hold the record for the fastest climber. That is still held by Lakpa Gelu Sherpa, and his fastest ever ascent of Everest was in 2003. He reached the summit in 10 hours and 56 minutes. Purnima Shreth, also from Nepal, became the first woman to climb Everest 3 times in a single season. Ligia Madrigal Moya, I probably butchered that name, is the first female from Costa Rica to summit Mount Everest. And I have so much admiration for the people who live in countries like Costa Rica and Egypt and Israel that, you know, there are no mountains really. There's definitely no snow. Maybe there's snow in Costa Rica. But they don't have the backyard, if you will, to just go climb mountains. They have to travel. They have to make more of an effort. And so I think their accomplishments are a lot bigger. There was one false record, and it was all over social media, but then it's not really a record. And I can't remember her name. I am so sorry. That the youngest Indian female climber had summited at age 16. However, that record is still held by Purna Malavath, and she summited Everest in 2013 at the age of 13 years and 11 months. Purna Malavath still is not the youngest to summit Mount Everest. And of course, showing my Israeli pride, Ran Kraus became the 11th Israeli to summit Mount Everest this year. There were also 2 viral videos this year that were all over the internet and YouTube and X, formerly known as Twitter and Facebook. The first one was Devin Levesque, who did a backflip on the summit. Pretty cool. Kind of risky though. Like, what would happen if you did a backflip and then you fell into China? Because that could happen. And the second was a team of Jewish climbers, Minyan Everest team, that raised the Torah scroll at the summit. They weren't the first ones. There was a group last year, but they did raise it to raise awareness of the 120 hostages left in Gaza, which are not just Israelis. They are people from all over the world. They hold citizenship in 28 different countries, including one Nepali hostage. All right, we're going to talk about the Yeti, or the elephant, in the room. So, oh, Nims. Nirmal Purja, also known as Nims or Nims Day, He was featured prominently in the 14 Peaks documentary and owns and operates Elite Xped. He's a high-profile climber. He's a big influencer. He climbs with a lot of flashiness, shoots for the records, shoots for things that other people haven't accomplished, has become really prominent in the mountaineering community, especially Mount Everest. And he's also known for not really following the rules. Last year, he lost his Guinness record for summiting the 14 peaks the fastest because it was determined that he hadn't really reached the peak of all of the 8,000ers, which several of these mountains have false summits, so it could happen to anyone. I have heard from several people that have climbed with him and also others in the mountaineering community that he can rub people the wrong way. And this year, he was involved in several incidences. I have a lot of admiration from him because he did come from nothing, but his behavior has become very questionable. I do know that he provides a lot of opportunities for others, especially in the Nepali community. Because of him, there are many climbers that have been able to make a name for themselves. And because of that, they have been able to open doors to their own companies and things like that. But this last month, there have been a lot of questions about his ethics and how he treats people. So let's talk first about ropegate. On May 27th, NIMS posted a video and he made accusations that his team was not able to summit because he was sabotaged and the fixed ropes were cut. However, this claim was disputed because Pioneer Expeditions, they stated that they were there afterwards and they had no problem with the fixed ropes. They weren't cut. They were just fine. It's a he said situation. The Nepali government disputes NIMS Day's claims and said that they couldn't find that these ropes had ever been cut. We do know that accidents happen, and there have been issues in the past where avalanches have taken out the ropes, but no one really knows what the truth of the matter is. This next incident, trigger warning, you may want to skip ahead. I am talking about violence towards women. Probably skip 5 minutes forward. On May 31st, an article hit the New York Times titled, "For Female Climbers, Dangers Go Beyond Avalanches and Storms," by Anna Callaghan and Jenny Vrentis. These two writers bring awareness in their expose to the sexual harassment and abuse towards women in mountaineering, and particularly allegations made against Nirmal Purja. Since really digging into the Everest community the last 4 years, I had heard stories and even talked to women who had insinuated or even talked about how difficult it is climbing with him as a female and how many women have distanced themselves from him because of his reported misogynistic and inappropriate behaviors. And until now, no one has officially gone onto the record. But in this expose, Lotta Hinsa from Finland and American Dr. April Leonardo are featured in the article, and they describe their assaults. They officially went on the record. Many of the expedition companies have remained silent, especially the Nepali ones. NIMS Day is a very powerful influencer, and he has a lot of power, especially in the Nepali community. There are a lot of people that are obligated to him because he has opened up a lot of doors and he has power. He's pretty famous. And so a lot of people are just not willing to speak out, especially women that he has, I'm going to straight up call it what it is, that he's violated and assaulted. But there are several prominent climbers in the Everest community that have spoken out or at least addressed the allegations in support of the two women. Adrienne Bollinger from Alpenglow, Alan Arnett, Adventure Consultants, Medicine Mountaineering, Climbing the Seven Summits, and Furtenbach Adventures. And honestly, it wasn't really a matter of if, but when someone would speak up. It takes a lot of guts to do that. It is not easy to be open and honest and to make someone accountable for sexual assault and harassment. Through his lawyer, Nirmal Purja denies the claims and has announced that he is suing the New York Times for defamation. Nepal's Department of Tourism has launched an investigation, and lawmaker Rajendra Bhajan, I think that's how you pronounce it, is calling for the Nepali government to ban Nim's Day from entering Nepal, which he's a Nepali citizen, and I don't know if you can even do that. It's not like he is a convicted criminal or anything like that. Just the allegations have been made. I do not know if any charges have been brought up against him or not. Just that these two women have brought up their allegations very publicly. And also Lata Hinsa on her Instagram, she had a post and she encouraged anyone else that has had situations like this in the mountaineering community, not just with NIMS, but in the mountaineering community, should reach out to Anna Callaghan and Jenny Vrentis with the New York Times. Oh, besides those incidences, there were some other things. Again, he likes to break the rules or at least bend them. I don't know him personally. This is just based off of what I've heard from people and what has been made available to the public. But I've heard for years that he can be difficult to work with. On May 19th, he took an illegal helicopter ride to Camp 2. And this year, all helicopter flights above base camp were banned. And supposedly, and again, this is alleged, he said that, he's a trained medical provider and that some of his teammates were having medical issues, and so that's why he took the helicopter. And the Nepal Department of Tourism has also started an investigation after witnesses said that his company, Elite Exped, allowed one of its team members to use somebody else's permit, and it wasn't even a permit for the right mountain. Because of everything that's going on, NIMS has lost at least 2 of his sponsorships. He's been a spokesperson and sponsored by multiple companies, including Red Bull. And he recently, I can't remember the name of the watch brand, but they have dropped him, as well as Osprey packs. And before I forget, the last 2 things that I wanted to bring up was, well, actually, it's just one thing. Last but not least, Tibet. China played games and will not let anyone enter Tibet until May 7th, which normally it takes weeks of acclimatization. However, 3 teams, including Adrian Bollinger and his Alpenglow team, with the use of his rapid ascent program, didn't have any problems. All 6 of his clients summited successfully, and there were no deaths on the Tibetan side this year. Not a lot of summits, but again, when you're not allowed into the country, you can't really acclimatize properly, and so it was very minimal. And China played these games in the fall. They would not approve people to not only climb Mount Everest, but they wouldn't even let them into the country. So there's that. All right, I'm trying another version of editing today, so hopefully this one is a little bit better than the last one. And if any of you know of really good editing software, just let me know, because this is getting old. I am not good at this editing stuff. I'm really, really not. And that's it. That is all of today's recap. I know I am missing something. There's something that I mentioned last week, or maybe it was the week before, that I wanted to bring up. I'll have to screenshot it when I remember it, or make a note or something like that. That's usually how I make outlines for my episodes. Don't forget to tune in next week for the episode about David Brashears. He really brought a lot to the Everest and the mountaineering community. And because of him, they know more about Mount Everest. He opened up that world for so many people. And so I think it's important to celebrate him in an episode because he's one of those that changed what Everest looks like today, and not in a negative way, in my opinion. So until next time, climb your own climb, and until then.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the All About Everest podcast. Please support this podcast by following, rating, commenting, and sharing. I appreciate your feedback, and you can find me on social media at Mama Bear Outdoors or at All About Everest podcast. Thank you for following and listening since 2022.